Hey, in this video, I'm going to explain how you can connect your Fathom account to your Utari account and have your sales calls analyzed. So obviously you're going to need a Fathom account, and if you want to send it into Slack or any other communication channel, you're going to need that as well. In this tutorial, we'll just focus on Fathom and Slack. One thing before we begin, just want to let you know that you can always check out our docs by going to docs.utari.ai, and you can look at all the different types of information we have and the different capabilities that Utari is capable of, and we're always updating this. So the first thing is hop into your Utari account. And what we're going to do is we're going to hop into the workers area, and we're going to create a new sales call analyzer worker. Now, you already see I have one here, but I'm just going to create a new one from scratch just so you can see the process. So I'm going to click on add workers, and then I'm going to click on create worker. And from there, I'm going to be brought to a screen that I can, rename the worker. A worker is basically just a mini employee. So let's just say that you have different tasks that you want your employee to do. You would give it different tools, different, rule sets, things like that. So that's what we're doing here. If you have a new employee and you tell them to go staple something, but you don't give them the stapler or the instructions on how to staple it, even though the task seems simple, they might not be able to complete that task. So you want to create a worker and make sure that it has the right integrations, the right tools, the right information to complete the task. So in this case, I'm just going to name this sales call analyzer, and we'll maybe say 2, and I don't need to change the icon. If you want to change the icon, you can. And now we have our sales call analyzer number 2. Now, the first thing is I'm going to hop into instructions. Instructions you don't need to change. These are basically just instructions for the agent, so that it knows what tools, what capabilities, etc. If you want to change something here, again, I don't recommend this, but if you wanted to, you can edit the system prompt and just add information down below. But we are going to actually tell the agent what to do in another area. So I'm not going to modify this. What I am going to do though is hop into integrations. I am going to skip over tools because when you create a new worker, those tools are already enabled. So you don't necessarily need to do anything, but feel free to take a look at, different tools that Utari has, as well as checking out our docs to look at the different worker tools that are available. Let's go back into here, and we're going to head into the integrations area. In the integrations area, I'm going to click on browse apps, and what I'm going to search for is Fathom. Now, each mini employee or each worker can have different integrations or different tools enabled. So let's say that you added Fathom to this one and you created a new worker. It's not going to have Fathom capabilities. So you just got to keep that in mind, that whenever you create new workers, that you're going to have to add those integrations into that worker. I'm going to click on create connection, which is basically allowing me to create a new connection. I'm going to click on create connection, and I'm going to give this a name. Just say Fathom profile number 4, because this is my 4th one. And then what we need to do is hop back into our Fathom account. So you're going to go into settings here. And if you don't see it, just hit settings here as well. And you should scroll down and be able to see the API access. And I'm going to click on add. And you're going to click on generate API key. You're going to give it a name. So let's just say Utari sales. And then I'm going to click on create API client. Now you'll notice that I do have an API key here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to hop back into our Utari worker, and I'm just going to paste this in here and click on connect. Now, once you click on connect, it should add all the different tools that are available to us from Fathom. And you can see here we have 7 tools that are now enabled. If you hop back into Fathom, just make sure that you don't share this API key with anyone else. And obviously I'm going to delete this after the fact, but you want to make sure that you keep this in a secure place, just because people can access this if you were to, share that. All right, cool. So now we have our Fathom integration connected. I'm going to add another integration into this worker. And in this case, I'm going to search for Slack. Now for Slack, I'm just going to click this, and I'm going to select a existing profile that I already have. But for you, you would click on create connection. And let's just say that this is Slack profile number 3. And I click on connect. It's going to show a pop-up where you're going to then have to authenticate your Slack account. So you would just select the Slack account you want to actually add. For now, like I said, I already kind of have a Slack account added. So I'm just going to add in this profile number 2. Click on add all tools, and this should add all of the different tools into our particular sales call analyzer 2 worker. You can see there's 155 tools enabled. If you don't need all of these tools, and most cases you don't, you can deselect a tool just by clicking on the checkbox. If you don't want that to be enabled, and then you can click on save tools. For now, I'm just going to leave it as is. Lastly, you can add a different knowledge into a worker. So depending on if you already already have like a very particular SOP, or you have, any type of document that you want the agent to follow, you can add information through the knowledge base. Feel free to reach out to us to help you with that, or look at our documentation down here where we have activate and assign knowledge. It's really important that you understand how this works, because even though that you may add knowledge, if you go into the knowledge base here and you add knowledge, you still have to enable the knowledge for this particular worker. Again, every single agent or worker is its own unique mini employee, and that employee can have different SOPs or different documents that will guide it to do the task that it needs to do. Lastly, I'm going to go into the triggers area, and I'm going to create a new trigger. So I'm going to click on create. I'm going to go to webhook trigger, which is what we actually need in order for our calls to be analyzed. I'm going to select the worker, which is already pre-configured here. And I'm just going to say Fathom sales call, right? So this is the trigger that's going to trigger that actual sales call analyzation. Now what we're going to do is click on next, which is going to be to configure the prompt or configure the agent instructions. So these instructions are essentially how the agent is going to understand what they need to do. And what it needs to do is process the call recording. So what I'll do is I'll put a prompt down below that I know works for sure. But essentially, the more context, the more information that you provide it, the better. So you don't want to just say like process the following recording, because that is very simplistic. You want to say something like process the following recording using your Fathom tools. And you might even want to give it additional context and say, you are going to receive some calls, and your job is to process the following recording using your Fathom tools, right? And you can also even just call out the different tools that it has. So maybe you say, you'll either get a transcript or you'll get a meeting ID to use to find the transcript, right? And then once you have the transcript, you will analyze the call for whatever, right? So whatever you're trying to extract, you would then tell the agent, like, extract the outcomes or extract the next steps or extract the different insights from the call. Did the call do well? Whatever it is you want that agent to or worker to extract, you would make sure that you call it out here. And once you have the analyzation, you could also call out like use this knowledge, so that, like, remember I was talking about the knowledge bases, you can say use this SOP to analyze the call. But the prompt is really like, you need to make sure that you tell it what it needs to do, because it's just going to automatically run. So you obviously, the more context and information you give it, the better. So once you have the analyzation, you are to then use your Slack tool to send it into Slack. And then the channel you are to send it in is, XYZ, whatever the channel is. One thing I do like to add at the end of my prompts is like important lines. And, these important lines are essentially like, it just calls out more importance to that phrase. So you could basically say like, important, please make sure that you don't ask me any questions and you just start doing the task as soon as you receive the transcription or meeting ID to find the transcript, right? So basically what I'm telling you is like, don't ask me questions, because in some instances, the agent or worker may want to follow up and say like, hey, like, is this the type of call I need to analyze, right? And you can also add things like only analyze the title, like a call with this title or something like that. But you can obviously get really descriptive here. The point that I'm trying to make is here is like, I don't want the agent to ask me any questions, because it's going to run automatically, and I just want it to run. I don't want it to do anything else but the task at hand. So you can even add something like that, like a second important line, which is like, please make sure you follow the rules to complete the task at hand. You can also like add order of operations as well to improve the agent capability. So like, you can say something like, for additional context, here are the order of operations. And you could say like, 1, get the meeting ID or transcript. 2, use the Fathom tool to extract the transcript if you don't have it. 3, analyze the call. 4, send to Slack, right? And then boom, like that's the order of operations. But the point is, obviously I'm not going to like do a whole prompting masterclass here, but the point is you can actually get really specific in what you want this agent to do. The one thing as well is, you see here down here where it says available variables. So you can actually include information from Fathom, or really any webhook, but Fathom specifically, since we're talking about it, you can actually add those available variables here. So like, for example, as soon as that call is going to be complete, we can actually say, this right here. So we can say payload, right? And that payload is going to be information that is sent in from Fathom. So it can be the transcript, it can be the meeting ID. You can even get really specific with the actual field. So if you look at Fathom's documentation or any other, third-party APIs documentation, you can actually call out specific fields from the payload that they're sending in. A payload, again, is just another way to, let's say, like the information that we're sending into the system, into Utari. So, in this case, like payload is the entire, like all of the information versus like, let's say I only wanted to send in the person's first name. Maybe it's payload.firstname, right? Depending on what Fathom has set up. Cool. So we have all of that information here. We have our prompt here, and then I'm going to click on create trigger. And now I'm presented with a webhook URL. So what I'm going to do is copy this webhook URL, and then I'm going to hop back into our Fathom account, and I'm going to click on continue here. And now it should say Utari sales, and I'm going to click on add webhook, and I'm going to paste that Utari link that was provided to me inside of this destination URL. Now you can select the different scopes. So you can select my recordings, my team shared recordings, team recordings, external recordings, totally up to you on what you want to share. Most cases you probably do want your team recordings, and maybe you want external recordings, but feel free to, disable any of these or enable any of them. And then lastly, you want to include the transcript. In some cases, the transcript may not be provided, which is why we kind of did that fallback or like gave additional instructions if that transcript was not provided. But if that transcript is provided, we want this enabled. You can toggle off summary and action items if you don't want that, and then that's it. So we can click on create webhook, and now you see I have my webhook created. Now if I go back into Utari and I click on done, now I have my trigger that is set to this particular worker. And now every time a call is complete, it's going to trigger this webhook, and it's going to send into our sales call analyzer for us to review. Now, the one thing to note here is if you click on the settings icon, you can change any of the details, including the prompt, but you won't actually see the sales call analyzation in the chat area here. Where you will see the analyzation is if you go into triggers here and you go into the Fathom sales call trigger that we created, you'll see here that we have all of the details, including the recent runs. Now, obviously, I just created this, so we're not going to see any recent runs here, but you can see the prompt as well as all the other technical details down below. So just to give you reference, if I click on Fathom test, which is another test I was doing down below, you'll see here that I have a recent run. Now, if I click on this recent run, this is going to actually show me the chat where that sales call was actually analyzed. And of course, this is a test, but the point is this is an example of like that call being analyzed. So this actual chat doesn't show up in the chat area. So it doesn't show up here. It shows up in the actual triggers. So if I go again to Fathom test, if I go to Fathom sales call and then I go to Fathom test here, you'll see that I have the recent run from that particular sales call that was analyzed. So if you want to see your past analyzations, you just have to make sure that you click on the external webhook trigger that has that, and then you can go into recent runs. So that is essentially it. Now, every time a sales call is complete using Fathom, it's going to trigger this particular worker. This worker has instructions on what to do to process this call, right? And the order of operations and the different Slack channels that it needs to send that information into, et cetera, et cetera. Feel free to reach out to us in our private community where you can ask additional questions, or if you need help with your prompt or setting this up, let us know, and I'll put the link down below so you can join us inside of Telegram where you can ask any other additional questions.